Hello everybody, welcome back to Modern Dentures. In this video I'm going to explain to you how I reduce the number of adjustments that I need to do with my patients that are having dentures, particularly full dentures, where we tend to see we need a lot more adjustments because of all the soft tissues. I've done a video before about reducing the adjustments of the extensions of the denture, so take a look at that video because it's a really good one and explains the main way that I reduce extensions. But in this video it's kind of like a follow-up to that and how I reduce extensions with the system of making the denture rather than what we can do in the clinic to reduce the likelihood. And that is with using injection molded technology. There's lots of benefits for the injection molded dentures. One of them is the material is a lot lighter than some of the standard acrylics, which tend to be quite heavy. It's also a lot stronger, so the dentures will last longer. It's also got more of a flexural strength to it, so the dentures have got a little bit more give in them, which means they will last longer over time. The other thing that's really good with them is that you can make the acrylic thinner as well, so there's less bulk in the patient's mouth. And all these things are great for explaining to the patient when you're selling them a denture, you know, the cost of it is going to be considerably more because it's injection molded, but it's better. And it is a lot more work for the lab to do in the way that we flask the dentures up. It's a lot more time consuming, and the machinery and equipment that we use is very expensive, and the materials as well, they come in capsules, and so those capsules are more expensive than just buying the powder and liquid and mixing them manually. They're all predetermined sizes. It means there's a bit more waste as well and things like that. However, the finished product is much better. But what I wanted to talk about in this video is, apart from all that, the dentures fit better. Not necessarily the fitting surface of the denture, which I actually think does fit better, because if there's less acrylic, there's less shrinkage and expansion of the acrylic, and so they're far less likely to be distorted after they're deflasked. But the other thing about them is the way that they're invested. So a traditional method, you have the bottom of the flask, you set the model in, and then we top the flask with the other half, heat it, remove the wax, soften the wax up, open the flask up, remove all the wax, boil it out, and then we put a putty acrylic, mixed up putty, into the flask, put the top back on, and then we squash the two halves of the flask together, and then the flash comes out. And this is the problem, that flash can have a thickness to it. It may not be much of a thickness, but whatever that thickness is a distortion of the denture, and it's what we call a raised bite. So if you have a dentures made in a traditional method, typically happens is as they're flasked through, the bite is raised a little bit because of that flash, and then the technician will cut all the flash off, then they'll re-articulate that model, and then they'll grind the teeth in to close the bite back down. Because if they don't, and the denture goes in, that little bit of flash that's in there is how much it's opened the bite by, and it might not be a lot. So let me explain. If you open the bite by 1 millimetre in the posterior region, as the jaw opens, and obviously it swings on an arc, so opening the bite by 1 millimetre at the back is going to transfer to probably 2, 3, 4, even 5 millimetres in the anterior region. What you'll find is that you're having to grind off the posterior bite in those situations. Now obviously that can happen if the job's not articulated correctly, or if the bite registration's not been taken correctly. But another thing that can cause it is this of a traditional packing method of the denture. If you're injection moulding, you can absolutely rule that out. Because the way that injection moulding works is that we flask it very similar. It goes into the first half. We then top the flask with the other half of the flask, so it's encased. Then we boil it out the same way as we do. We open it up, we clean everything out, but we don't put a ball of putty in there. We put the two halves together. It's then sealed. The acrylic is injected into that void, and so there's no flash. There may be a little bit in the gap of, you know, where the models go together. If there's a little bit of plaster's chipped off or something like that, you might get a little bit, but that flash isn't changing the bite. It's just a little bit of excess material. It's not actually changing the bite because it's the flask's in a fixed position when it's injected in. What that means is if you do the traditional method and that flash opens the bite by, even if it's just a fraction of a millimetre, that's all it takes. If it's open and so there's more pressure on the back teeth than there is on the front teeth, which is what usually happens, and now you can see this in the mouth. The patient's coming back and the sores are in the back, or they're biting and it's not making their mouth sore, but the dentures are tipping because they're hitting at the back teeth first. That's quite often that is caused by the flasking method and that flash. The other problem is when the jobs are re-articulated to trim those teeth in to make sure the bite isn't opened, the dentures can be over trimmed to get past all the undercuts, especially on the soft tissue, because the model's not soft, it's hard, it's rigid. And so what the technician has to do is have to cut away all the soft tissue undercuts in order to get that model back on in the same position that it was. But sometimes they're over adjusted in those undercuts around the teeth and things like that. And quite often I'll ask especially if there's only a few teeth, if the patients have only got a few teeth, I'll just ask the technician to leave all the undercuts in, and I'll do it chairside because I like to just take a little bit out, try it in the mouth, take a little bit out, try it in the mouth. And the reason I do that, again, is because it reduces the chance of adjustments by the denture being over trimmed to fit onto a plaster model. We're maximising how that denture fits, because a plaster model, obviously it hasn't got any of the soft tissue, which has got the compression and things like that, the natural tissue in the mouth has got, but also the teeth on a ligament. And so sometimes when you're putting the denture in, the teeth will move ever so slightly, and you can't replicate that when you're fitting a denture to a plaster model. So I like to fit them directly chairside. And I'm just taking a little bit off at a time so I can just see, and I'm looking to see where the contacts are in the patient's mouth, where it's touching the teeth. Take a little bit off, try it back in, take a little bit off, try it back in, until I get it just perfect so the denture just goes in, and then it's just sat there. And the teeth may move ever so slightly just to allow that to go, and then it'll click into place. You have to be careful you're not forcing it in, otherwise you end up with a stuck denture, but you're just trimming it ever so slightly until you're getting that denture in. Get the most stability, the most retention, and in my opinion it's the best way of doing it. That's not really practical if the patient's got a mouthful of teeth and they've only got a couple that are missing. In that sort of situation, you can do it, but it takes a long time. So you're either going to have to make a long appointment so that you can just meticulously trim those little undercuts out until that fits. But that's a lot more difficult to do. So in those sort of situations, I typically do it on the model. And it's okay to do it on the model in that situation because there's so many teeth that the undercuts, you know, it's more likely that the denture is going to fit. I'm sure you know if you've made dentures before, the more teeth the patient has, the better fit the denture is going to be, the more stability you've got, etc, etc. So if you want to reduce the chance of an overbite through that excessive flash and make it more likely that your dentures are going to fit better first time, therefore giving you less chance of any adjustments to be made in the future, I would suggest that you seriously think about having your dentures injection moulded. I think the best system is the over base system. Second to that, over cap. I think over cap can generally be cheaper because the plastic could be mixed separately rather than buying the capsules. But if you're doing injection molding dentures, you can charge a lot more for it, and to be honest, I don't think it's worth trying to save a couple of pound mixing it by hand, because again, the capsules, these are predetermined sizes, so it's the exact amount of liquid to the exact amount of powder ratio when they're mixed. It can't be messed up. It's all set measurements. Whereas if you're mixing it manually, put a little bit in and you mix it, and you'll put too much powder, so you try putting a little bit more liquid in. I'm sure you know, as from mixing alginate, that doesn't work. It's not good. It's easier with acrylic, but those ratios are crucial to getting the best performing acrylic, which is why I prefer the over base. I hope that video helps. I hope that you all consider trying some injection molded acrylic dentures. Ask your technicians if they do it, first of all. Not all laboratories do the injection molded, but if they do, definitely try it. And I'm sure that you'll find that you get less denture adjustments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.